Good evening. We're going to call the meeting for Akron City Council to order. At this time, our clerk will read the roll.
Baylor, Connor,
Here.
Freeman, Fusco, Holland,
Aye.
Keemer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Mosley,
Aye.
Neal,
Here.
Amobian,
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
All members are present except for Councilwoman Baylor and Councilman Freeman.
At this time, for those who voluntarily wish to do so, will you please stand as we are led in prayer by Pastor David Nelson, who is the pastor of New Hope Baptist Church. Immediately following our prayer, I'm going to ask if Councilman McKittrick will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening, everyone. Let's bow in prayer. Dear wise and loving Father, first let's just thank you on behalf of all those gathered here today. Thank you for the many and abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself. Thank you for the measure of health and all that we need to fulfill our callings and assignments and our life journeys. Thank you for the ability to be involved in this useful work and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Therefore, we pray for our mayor, our various levels of city officials, and in particular, this assembled council. We pray that our city council tonight, as we discuss the agenda and craft policies for our city, that we will always put people's interests above our own, have a sense of welfare and the true needs of our city, a keen thirst for compassion and justice, confidence in doing what is good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony even when there's disagreement, and the wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our time. And so, Father God, remind us that we are in a position not to be served, but to serve the public. And just as Jesus Christ came not to be served, but to serve, and ultimately to die on the cross to save us, we pray that we're able to uphold what is moral and rational in your eyes. We ask all these things in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. The minutes from our previously held meeting have been provided. Are there any additions or corrections?
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor, roll call.
Connor,
Aye.
Fusco, Holland,
Aye.
Kamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Mosley,
Aye.
Neal,
Abstain.
Amobian,
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
The motion to approve the minutes passes 10-0 with one abstention.
Before you is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, roll call.
Connor,
Aye.
Fusco, Holland,
Aye.
Kamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Mosley,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
The consent agenda passes 11-0.
We don't have any public hearings scheduled for this evening, so we're going to move right into old business. Rules, Councilman Fusco. Time will be granted. Budget and Finance, Councilwoman Amobian.
Time.
Okay. Time will be granted. Councilman Neal.
Madam Chair, I spoke with the chair, Ms. Amobian, regarding the legislation that we discussed this afternoon. Had a chance to talk to Ms. Porter, and the reason for the funding is the same that's been given to this council 2 months ago. Same information given 2 months ago, same information forwarded to council at 3 requests. The $100,000 request is for the refurbishing of the bus. $68,000 is what they need. $32,000 would help with operating, which is hiring people for the bus and other things that they need. Those who deal in the nonprofit world know that when you get a grant, you are restricted to what the grant is funding, okay? The $40,000 that they've raised is for operating expenses. So, you know, this council has a right to pass the money on to Ring cameras. A worthy cause. We still don't know the impact of that. I checked with Captain Miller before this time, and right now, everybody knows that eventually it's going to help, but we can't say if it's helped or not. And the thing with Ring cameras is that's not preventative. It helps after the fact. Here, with providing a shower bus, we can help restore dignity to those who can't even take a shower. And remember, when this shower bus is on the street, remember what comes with it: medical assistance, connection to resources in the community. So this council has a right. I explained with the chair, we have one more meeting for real business. So the council can vote to fund it through this request, or has been stated with this council, there is another funding source, but need to know if we're going to use this funding source or not, or if we're going to split it with the others. Because we have the money that had been set aside for the chief of staff. We never brought in an ordinance, so it's only right that that money's probably still coming from the mayor's budget, because if it's not, we would be violating our charter, because council has to vote on any position. So since those dollars are there under council, we can either take from the 172 and fund the bus. Remember, it's 68 just to do the bus. That 100 would give them 32 towards operating, where they could hire people. When this bus would hit the street, then all the medical assistance behind it, access to resources, would come behind it. That's what is waiting for us right now. And if council decides to send the whole 172 to the Ring cameras, then we have the other monies that are set aside in the budget. But council needs to make a decision, because we only have one more meeting. So whatever your vote is, please vote so we know next week we'll bring in another funding source. But it's been since September that we've been talking about this. I heard the pastor during his prayer, he talked about granting us the moral consciousness to do what's right. We can vote on this. The Ring cameras, you could put that into the next budget. This right here, the company that's actually refurbishing the bus is waiting for them to pay so that they can move forward. So I'd like to ask that this be pulled out of committee and come before council as a whole, so that the council can vote on it. Again, vote it up, vote it down, but let us know how we're going to proceed. Let the community know how this council is going to support this initiative. Better yet, let the Forever's Children and Access Point and all the community partners, Metro and everybody that's Summit County, all those that have funded it already, know if council is going to help push this across the goal line. So I'm asking for a motion to pull this, I'm making a motion that we pull this out of committee, bring it before council as a vote, so that council can decide how they're going to support it, or if they're going to support it at all.
And so just so that I'm clear, Councilman Neal, you do have a motion on the floor?
Yes, ma'am. There has to be a motion. It has to be seconded.
I just want to be clear. So we have a motion on the floor to pull the piece out of committee and to go into committee as a whole. So is there a second to do that tonight? Councilman Malik?
Can I make a comment?
Yes, absolutely.
I appreciate the discussion that we had in the committee meeting this afternoon. I appreciate the information from Ms. Porter. I think that the discussion that we had in the committee meeting was appropriate, and that we have an opportunity, and we should vote on this next week. But the reality, as it's been described, is that we're being asked to contribute $100,000, $70,000 for the bus and $30,000 for operating, which is about 30% of this nonprofit's budget for the entire year. And that, that hasn't been totally clear until this evening, or at least to me until this evening. And, we can say that there's alternative funding schemes. you're talking about the council chief of staff. That's a position that is currently filled, that a person is filling. So unless we're talking about taking away that person's salary, that's not a funding source that's currently available, right? The travel budget that was discussed earlier, sorry, I should refer to your, the travel budget that was discussed, there's about $1,500 left in that. I think that this is a perfectly good project to undertake. I think that we should find a funding stream. I'm not opposed to the ARPA budget and the leftover money from the restaurant program being part of it, or maybe we can afford to do 30,000. Maybe we can afford to do 60 or 70,000 for the full bus, or maybe we can afford to do the whole 100,000. But I don't believe we're sitting here tonight in a place where we can say this is something that we should take that whole 100,000 and allocate to this single project. And I think that, you know, it's appropriate to discuss next week in the committee and spend the next week until we get there trying to figure out where we can find funding sources together. So, you know, we can discuss this on the floor this evening, but it's a lot of the discussion that we had in the committee meeting this afternoon.
Councilman Neal, Councilwoman Mobian, did you have a comment?
I think my discussion with Mr. Neal following the meeting was essentially that the committee has voted to time this with the understanding that we still have 2 more meetings. Even though the last meeting is ceremonial, there's a part of that meeting that we have to take care of business. I just suggested that we wait until next week to see if there's some additional information to come forward with some additional ways to find money. Whether it's the whole amount or a part of it, it's been very clear to me that the entire council is in favor of this project. It's just a matter of trying to find where do we get dollars from, and that was my position this afternoon when I spoke with you. That's why I said let's continue time. We have next week and we have the following week, but we should be able to hopefully find something. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Mosley?
Thank you, Madam President. I am in full support of the shower bus. I do hope that we will wait till next week. I would hate for something to come to the floor and die before it even has an opportunity to get off the floor. I have reached out to Pastor Porter, and I've been texting back and forth with her. And so finding that number that works for them and works for this body, I think is important. And I think just giving it another week for us to hash out where it's going to come from is important, and not just let it die here on the floor, and us to do the right thing by those houseless people who really need it. Thank you.
Councilman Neal?
I encourage council to go back to the past discussions. This is what was said before. People needed information. People needed information. You got the information. No decision has been made. Understand this. The chief of staff has been being paid. If she's been paid out of council's budget, it's a violation of the city's charter, because no legislation came before council for us to vote on it. So it's not taking away her position. If you remember, the mayor stated that he was paying for her position out of his budget. So I could only assume, since that no legislation ever came before this body, that that's what's still being done. Because if council's paying her out of our budget, it's a violation of the city's charter and our rules. Only council by vote can establish a new position. Now, that being said, that's why those dollars would still be there. It's not eliminating the position. Back to the Beacon Journal article, the mayor said that he was paying for it out of his budget. Even though when Bliss Institute was consulted about that, they said that's highly unusual because we're 2 separate branches of government. But be that as it may, that's what's being done. No legislation's come before us, so that money should still be there, or we're violating our city's charter. Okay? So that's one pot of money. And now, here's the other thing. The thing about the Ring doorbell cameras, that's ARPA dollars. You're not going to get out all those cameras by the end of the year. This shower bus is waiting right now to be completed. The community partners that are working with them, Access Point and all those, are waiting right now to get out onto the street. The shower bus started coming to council back in the spring. So this isn't just since September, but we've been discussing this since September. Everything this council was asked for from them as far as financial information, they've provided. They don't need this for sustainability. They just need this to fix the bus. This is specifically to get the bus fixed, the 68. The other is for operating. So again, this council has the ability to join the rest of the community and push this across the goal line. We can wait till next week, but for what reason? What are the questions? If we're not going to fund it, because the way the resolution reads right now is to fund it out of the money that was going to the restaurants. If not that one, then we'll find another source, and I've identified another source. So it's just to vote it up or vote it down, folks. Everything you've asked from this organization, they have provided. I mean, the students with the $500,000 from $500,000, we found that. I'm not asking us to find this money. We've identified 2 funding sources.
Councilman Busco?
Yeah, just a point of order. Moving forward, I would respectfully request that all discussion, there's just a motion on the floor, but all the discussion should be around the actual motion to move forward or not the merits of exactly what is to be discussed. That would go later if there is, in fact, a second and a vote to discuss the actual legislation itself. Right now, we should only be discussing the motion to either vote yes or vote no, not the balance of what's actually within the legislation. So I myself personally am against, I am in favor of time.
Okay. So again, we do have a motion on the floor. There is no second. So Councilman Neal, are you?
Even in our silence, in council silence, you voted on this issue. So I thank you for the consideration.
And I don't think that's totally fair. You know, again, you originally brought forth the resolution in front of this body asking Akron City Council and the city to give $100,000 to Forever Our Children, right? And that passed unanimously. Each and every one of your colleagues agreed that the program and the shower bus is needed in our community, and we're committed to finding the money to be able to give them those resources. It passed unanimously. The question is just making sure that we find it from the appropriate funding source. That's it. Councilman Neal?
Madam Chair, again, your words. You found the money. This council, I believe it was Councilman Fusco, found $500,000. Found it. I mean, I might find a nickel or a quarter. I don't know about you all, but I don't find thousands of dollars. So what I'm saying is, it's been identified where the money could come from. It's been identified where the money could come from.
Okay.
It's evident that it's not the will of this council to fund them. So I've identified another funding source, or correct me if I'm wrong, per our charter, the only way we can create a position and fund that position is by this council voting on it. We've never voted on it. That money is in our line item in our budget. So that money is identifiable, and I'll bring in a resolution next week for that. Unless there is another member of council can find a funding source, wherever it comes from, let's find it, because we know by next week, this is important. Maybe if one of us was out on the street and hadn't taken a shower in 3 or 4 weeks or longer, we'd want this council to take time to discuss it. So this is what I'm saying. We can find another funding source. I welcome members of council to find another funding source if this is important, because we found $500,000. So if we're not going to make a decision tonight, next Monday, have one in. I'm going to bring in a resolution because that's the only other funding source I know where to find money. But don't play with these people's dignity. Don't play with their health and wellness. Let's pass this resolution.
Councilman
This
Fusco?
funding source.
Thank you. Just, and again, I'm going to speak to time, okay? From what I understand, this bus will not be on the road until next year. And there's also, in reference to time, the budget and exactly how much was a point that we need to find out, I feel, before this council's prepared, and that was a mention of concern during committee. And so we need time in order to figure out how much there's going to be needed. And also in terms of time, again, this is not supposed to hit the road till next spring, but we also had discussed that as soon as that capital budget comes out, we're going to be looking for ways to find those funds. And so on the issue of time, again, I would just ask that we move on with the rest of the agenda pursuant to our rules, because there's not a second. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move on, and we're going to move on with Planning and Economic Development. Councilman Fusco.
Yes, the request of the committee is favorable on item number 1. And this is the outdoor billboard to be located on the east side of Sumner, south of I-76. We discussed it, had a public hearing, and we recommend approval this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The committee's report is favorable. All in favor? Roll call.
Connor.
Aye.
Fusco.
Aye.
Holland.
Aye.
Kamer.
Aye.
Kamer.
Aye.
Lombardo.
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
Mosley.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Amobian.
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
This ordinance passes 11-0.
Councilman Fusco.
Yes, thank you. Time on 2 through and including 5. Okay. Referencing item number 6, the report of the committee is favorable, and we're asking for passage.
Any further comment, Councilman Fusco?
Yes, absolutely. This is, I know Council Representative Tara Mosley and Sharon Connor are in favor of this particular item. This is the SUMA proposal on East Market Street that we've been talking about. The developer is Fairmont. We have had 7 meetings out in the community. And if you count the Planning Commission, City Council, the Planning Committee of City Council, there's been about 12 or so meetings altogether. Excuse me. This is a 55 to $60 million project on the east side of town in support of SUMA, the hospital here. This will provide an opportunity for up to possibly plus or minus 200 apartments. And that's for those who may have to stay here whenever they have a loved one that's across the street at the SUMA hospital. The retail, there could be up to 25,000 plus or minus square feet of retail, restaurant, etc., on East Market Street itself. 200 apartments, and this could be utilized, 200 plus or minus, this could be utilized to support the those residents and those nurses and those folks, whereas they could just walk across the street to work. And this would be in support of that piece of it. The one thing that has been of big interest, I know, with a huge interest with a lot of us here on council, and some of us, I know Tara Mosley, myself, and others from the city attended a meeting at the garden site on Adolph Street and walked the neighborhood in search of another site. SUMA has committed and said that they could use that garden space next year. Beyond, not sure exactly what it's going to look like in terms of that particular space, but in all likeliness, for sure next year they should be able to use it. The following year, we're hoping we're going to help them find a permanent location. That's the message that we've heard, was a permanent location is what they want to find. And I myself, I know Tara Mosley, Sharon Connor, Shamus Malik, next mayor of Akron, are all we're all committed to assisting them with regards to finding a permanent location. And I know SUMA has also weighed in and said they're happy to help with whatever they can do from their side as well in terms of finding this. But we have to find a spot on the south side of East Market Street. And so that could take a while to find that permanent location. But with that, this is a welcomed development on the east side of town and in support of one of our largest employers in the city of Akron. So with that, we recommend approval this evening.
Thank you. Councilwoman Amobian?
I just wanted to make it clear that the first meeting we had at the church, I did attend, and I did speak with a number of the neighbors and a number of the individuals who were there. They said they understood perfectly that this was not going to be their permanent location for their garden. So they knew that this day would come. They didn't know when. So I understood from talking to the representative from SUMA and those representing this builder that this property and this venture was a go, and with the understanding that they will get a new location to do their gardening. So I did attend that meeting, and I thank the citizens for their input, and I listened to them that night with many of the council members that were present. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments
Thank
at this
you.
time? Okay, if not, sorry, Councilman Malik?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to kind of echo some of Councilman Flesko's sentiments. In particular, I think that overall this project is going to be, a significant asset to this community, particularly to SUMA, but I think to the entire East Market Street corridor. I think that it has also kind of underscored a point that Councilman Mosley, Councilman Fusco, and others have made for a number of years, which is that East Market Street and the east side of Akron deserve just as much public engagement and community process as any other part of Akron. I think, I want to make very clear that that my commitment is finding a permanent location for this community garden, and I think there are a couple ways in which city staff are supporting that effort right now. But my hope is that we can find that within the next few months and come to a resolution on that. And then I think the other point is that a number of residents shared broader concerns about the overlay and zoning this afternoon by email. And I know several of us have spoken briefly about that. I know that we want to take some time and see as we go forward with the broader overlay that's bigger than just this specific project site, whether some of those can be incorporated. And again, having a commitment to having broader public engagement around the East Market Street corridor. There are, a lot of concerns that are there. There's a lot of small businesses that are operating. There's a lot of people who live in that neighborhood. And there's a lot of community investment that's going on when it comes to the well, when it comes to SUMA, when it comes to other anchor partners. And, I think there's frankly just more work to be done in terms of how we engage everyone in that neighborhood and make sure that it's aligned with community partners.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay. The committee's report is favorable. All in favor, roll call.
Connor,
Aye.
Fusco, Holland,
Aye.
Kamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Mosley,
Aye.
Neal,
Abstain?
Amobian,
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
This ordinance passes 10-0 with one abstention.
Councilman Fusco?
Thank you. Time on 7. And on item number 8, the committee would like to recommend favorable.
Okay.
And this, in fact, is the overlay itself. 6, I don't know if I mentioned, that was the zoning change, but number 8 is actually the overlay piece. So with that, we recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The committee's report is favorable. All in favor, roll call.
Connor,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Holland,
Aye.
Kamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Mosley,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
This ordinance passes 11-0.
Councilman Fusco?
Time on number 9, and please file number 10. That's the petition for the outdoor billboard. And then time on the balance of the agenda.
Okay. Time will be granted. Public Safety, Councilman Kamer.
Thank you, President Somerville. Item number 1 is suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Are there any objections to suspension of the rules? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Thank you. This is just making some changes and updating our traffic code.
Okay, thank you so much. The rules have been suspended. The committee's report is favorable. All in favor, roll call.
Connor,
Aye.
Fusco. Aye. Holland,
Aye.
Kamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Mosley,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Amobian, Somerville.
Aye.
This ordinance passes 11-0.
Councilman Kamer.
Item number 2 is continued time.
Okay, time will be granted. That concludes our old business. We'll now move into new legislation.
Item 0, offered by Councilman Malik, resolution celebrating November as Native American Heritage Month, recognizing the rich local history of Native Americans in the Akron area, honoring the contributions of Native people to our community, and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco.
The request of the committee is for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Are there any objections to suspension of the rules? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
I'd like to request the sponsor, Mr. Malik, to please report this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as we discussed this afternoon at the committee meeting, at the federal level since 1990, November has been marked as Native American Heritage Month. And so I thought it was appropriate to bring in this resolution, especially because of Akron's history with a number of different Native communities, some of which are listed in the resolution, those of which we know of by way of the University of Akron. And just the resolution otherwise notes the Native American culture exhibit that they have as a permanent exhibition at the university. It's the Oak exhibition, and also the history of the Portage Path and other things. In discussing this with a member of the Native community who is also a Ward 8 resident, one of the things that they discussed was also the lack of kind of a historical and culture center for Native American history locally in the area. And they have a similar center down in the Columbus area and other places across the country. And so I think that, we should continue looking at ways to support our local Native American community, including potentially pursuing that and, empowering the local community as they kind of decide how to move forward. So that was part of the impetus behind this resolution, and just want to move forward with passage as this is our last meeting in November.
Okay. Are there any comments at this time? Councilwoman Mosley?
Motion for council as a whole.
So
Second.
We have a motion on the floor for council as a whole with a second. All in favor, roll call.
Connor,
Aye.
Fusco. Holland,
Aye.
Kamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Mosley,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
This resolution passes 11-0. Item 0A, offered by Fusco, ordinance authorizing the Director of Law or their designee to enter into a contract or contracts without the formality of publicly advertising for bids for the provision of professional services necessary or attendant to the provision of legal services to the City of Akron during the year 2024 and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco?
Refer.
This item will be referred.
Item 0B, offered by President Somerville and Vice President Fusco, resolution acknowledging the city administration's deletion and removal of Section 56 from the City of Akron's annual operating budget, reaffirming City Council's decision and commitment to ensuring that city contracts involving expenditures in excess of $50,000 are reviewed and authorized by council, and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco?
Refer.
This item will also be referred.
Item number 1, offered by Amobian, ordinance repealing and replacing ordinance number 291, 2021, creating, establishing, and recognizing departments, offices, bureaus, divisions, and positions in the classified service of the City of Akron, requiring that only budgeted funded positions be filled, and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Amobian?
We're recommending time.
Okay, time will be granted.
Item number 2, offered by Fusco. Ordinance authorizing a conditional use to establish a laundromat at 147 North Arlington Street and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco?
Refer.
This item will be referred.
Item number 3, offered by Fusco. Ordinance authorizing a conditional use to construct an office, retail, and medical marijuana dispensary on the west side of White Pond Drive, north of Nafee Boulevard, and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco?
Refer.
This item will be referred.
Item number 4, offered by Fusco. Ordinance authorizing a conditional use to establish a Type A daycare home at 782 Bellevue Avenue and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco?
Refer.
This item will also be referred.
Item number 5, offered by Mayor Horrigan, Councilwoman Amobian, and Councilwoman Holland. Resolution approving and confirming the appointment of Kim Ventresca to the City of Akron Commission on Aging for a 3-year term and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Amobian?
This afternoon, we voted to pass this resolution with suspension of the rules. Kim Ventresca, I don't think she's here. She was with us this afternoon virtually, and everyone received her vita as well as heard her speak this afternoon. And she will be filling a vacancy. She recently became the executive director of Vantage Aging, and she will be serving a 3-year term. And as evidenced by her resume, she's more than qualified to be on that commission. And we look forward to having her. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no objections, the rules have been suspended. The committee's report is favorable. All in favor, roll call.
Connor?
Aye.
Fusco? Holland?
Aye.
Hamer?
Aye.
Lombardo?
Aye.
McKittrick?
Aye.
Malik?
Aye.
Mosley?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Amobian?
Aye.
Somerville?
Aye.
This resolution passes 11-0.
Okay. That concludes our new legislation for this evening. We're now going to move to public comment period. If you have signed up to participate, going to ask that you please stand at this time so that you may be sworn in by our clerk.
Could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth? If so, please say, "I do." Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So you will have 3 minutes to speak to this body. Just going to ask when you hear your name that you approach the podium. And we're going to begin with Apostolette.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here. I'm just going to read to you because my time is going to run out. I'm here today to clear up a misnomer. I am not an enemy to the Akron Police Department at all, or to law enforcement. Neither am I in support of defunding the police. We need law enforcement, just as we need the preacher, the doctor, the lawyer, the judge, and others in our rightful positions here on the earth. The police are meant to be angels, just as the apostles were to Jesus Christ. There are many good law enforcement officers. I am the 9th cousin to the now late General George Washington, the first president of the United States of America, who was the first president to free slaves and to begin the abolition of slavery here in the United States. I am a family member to Charles Coatsworth Pinckney, who signed the Constitution, the United States Constitution. I am the daughter of a retired Army corporal and an attorney. I am the first cousin to a county sheriff who was a dear friend and like a brother to me. I am a retired probation officer for a municipal court. I also have friends who sacrifice their lives every day for good law enforcement. I am relative to the now late Queen Elizabeth of Great Britain and the late Congresswoman Stephanie Tubbs Jones and many other people that you're familiar with. The challenge I have had to face when I encounter some situations is when law enforcement is not done appropriately. My parents, who have been married now for 66 years, have told me to always tell the truth. As I seek the presidential seat of the United States of America for the 2024 election, I hope that you will help me bridge the gap between the citizens and the police. In doing so, we will need spiritual guidance from the church. We will need outreach. We will need finances, prayer, resources, and communication with one another. For me, if you contribute to me, I'd like to give something to this council so that you have funding for the police. And my Cash App is the People's Party. I signed a document, the clerk will have a copy of it, as well as apostolate. And anyone who's interested can call me at 330-428-9191. It's time for peace and for us to come to the table. It's time for people to stop being afraid of the police and the police to stop being afraid of the people. I hope you have a blessed and a safe holiday, and thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Apostolate. Imokai Okolo.
How we doing, folks? Don't look so mad. Give me a smile. I'm like, dang, you ain't gotta look so mad, Lombardo. Dang, we ain't enemies here. You ain't got to look so mad. Golly. Let's go. Y'all see how they look at me. Hello, my name's Imokai. How we all doing, folks? Here to talk about our new public comment rules that we're proposing. I find them very interesting and a little shameful on part of folks. So the limits, I think, really definitely, hurt folks' ability to speak out in public comment, right? I think it's not lost on us. This year is probably the most that we've had people coming down to city council. From the start of the year up until now, people have been here all the time. In the past probably decade, this has probably been the year of most activity in city council, right? That's what we want. That's what we've been talking about. I came here, I remember being a kid, not even necessarily a kid, but a younger adult, right, coming and hearing people talk about they want people to come down to city council, and that's what you got. Now, you might not always like what people got to say, but they have the right to be able to say that, right? They have the right to be able to try to address folks. So I read your article, Margot. It was an interesting article today. Well, not your article, the Signals article, but Margot, the interview, whatnot. Thought it was interesting. One of the comments was that, you guys are very accessible. And I want to push back on the accessibility piece. I think if we're being honest with ourselves, right, you guys are not that accessible. I think you guys are reasonably accessible to a degree, right? But if we're being real, you guys are not that accessible. Perfect example, we're organizing tenants in the Wilbeth and in the Collison apartments, right? They were talking about over 350 units, let alone people, right? So double that at least by the amount of people. I called Donnie multiple times when HUD was down here, when the state officials were down here. We've had multiple meetings since September. Called Donnie every single time. Donnie has not returned my phone call. Not that accessible, right? I call members here. I'd be surprised if Fusco returned one of my phone calls. No hate, no shame. I might not even answer your phone call, but you guys aren't that accessible, right? McKittrick, Lombardo, you guys are not that accessible, right? As accessible as you guys think you might be. No shade, Shamus, you're going through a lot right now. Not as accessible as you could be necessarily, right? It's no shade, it's the reality of the situation, right? And so public comment is an opportunity for folks to come and address you all as council, right? To give their thoughts on what's going on. You should allow that. Yeah, and you said that this legislation was kind of being put out there to get councils and the public's reaction. I can hear that, right? But if we all know how city council really works, we know that legislation does not come before y'all unless y'all got the votes. Unless Margot has talked to Fusco, Fusco has talked to Lombardo, Lombardo has talked to McKittrick, McKittrick has talked to Donnie Kamer, Donnie Kamer has now talked to Ginger Baylor, who I ain't seen in a while, right? That's how it works. And you guys are lying to us if you're telling us that's not how it works. We all know that's how it works, right? You guys got the votes, you think you got the votes, right? And if the public gets out here and says they don't want it to happen, what are you guys gonna do? I guarantee you most public comments today are gonna be about you guys not passing these rules. And if you guys then do pass the rules, are you guys actually looking for our input? We know y'all always don't go by people's input. I'm a testament, surely. Let's not be real, let's not fake the funk.
Imoka, I'm sorry. Thank you, your time's up. I want you to finish your last thought. David Garan.
David Garan. Your proposed changes to public comment is not in the interests of the citizens of Akron, but it's all about your self-interest. I understand that you want to get home, put on your Snuggie, and turn on MSNBC to get the propaganda feed given to you by Rachel Maddow. In history, one of the first actions by an authoritarian government is to restrict the ability of citizens to express themselves and to petition their government. These changes shall not be made. Next year, this body will find itself in a lack of funding because the ARPA funds will be all dried up. Also, the Akron Public Schools will probably be in a lack of funding for the same reasons. You've overextended yourselves. Therefore, we need you all to demand Congress to not spend $80 billion to arm Israel and Ukraine. We need this body to say to Congress, do not spend that money. Again, I'll make the point. We need to show our youth that we don't make things right with physical violence. We are supporting that violence. And until you understand that and you show that we're not going to accept using violence by our government, you must pass a resolution saying, do not spend money on further arming the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grand. Wesley Martin.
Hello, Council. I'm here primarily to discuss the rule on tonight's agenda, the proposed resolution that aims to amend Resolution 2-2021. I've spoken with many community members this past week about this. I've only heard negative things. The problem with the limitation of 10 public commentators is that it tarnishes any possibility of being able to see how many people are affected by a given agenda item at a given time. I'm trained in anthropology, and I know from experience that in order to do better, in order to better understand a community, you don't just want qualitative data, which is things like opinions, worldviews, ideas, stuff like that. You also want quantitative data, which has to do with the amount of people. In other words, you want input from as much of the population as you can get. Otherwise, you risk not having a representative sample. An accurate representation of the population is one of the basic and most crucial parts of democracy, and any effort to hinder that representation is an effort against the democratic process. You've seen how many people showed up the past few weeks because of the resolution regarding the ceasefire. This obviously was an issue felt very deeply by a lot of the community. It's obvious that the sheer amount of people came forward to speak made at least some of you rethink the matter as a whole and made you want to work harder to find a more respectful and holistic solution. So consider how that resolution passed last week might have been approached differently by the council if only 10 people were able to comment at a time. You'd have no bearing on just how many people would have ended up speaking. Plus, if there are multiple issues that an individual feels strongly about, but they're spread between multiple agendas, within the same month, that person won't get a chance to speak their voice heard on any more than one of them. There's no reason for the city to deny these voices, and regardless of whether the intentions were pure, this rule would critically limit the public's ability to provide their feedback in a civil setting. And that's the ironic part, because when you take away the public's ability to speak their voices in a civil setting, such as here in front of council, then some of those people will find uncivil ways to speak their voices. The citizens of Akron do not like to be silenced. They don't like it when their voices are severely limited, and I think that's a pretty agreeable statement. So to the council members in favor of this amendment and those who are still on the fence, I urge you to recognize the consequences of those proposed limitations. You would only be preventing yourselves more from understanding the needs of the community, and you can still allow public comment before voting takes place, regardless of how many people speak. If being able to allow public comments before voting was a real reason behind this, you could have proposed a limit on the amount of speakers that are available to speak before the vote and then open the floor back up to public comments later on. I'm not saying that's what should happen, but it's an example of an effort that could have been made if this was really about that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Wesley. Reverend John Beatty.
Madam President and members of the council, I came to speak. I didn't have time to read the proposed changes in public comments, but I agree with this young man, his rational arguments for not limiting the public comments. I realize that you probably didn't buy into being late for evening TV and bedtime. But I think that's part of the job. I really do. If we come down here without pay and try to inform you about important things to us, it's not fair to limit us from our public comments. Since I haven't had a chance yet, after getting the revised, I think, I'm a slow reader, and I haven't had a chance to look at the thing, the proposed changes. But I just suspect that it's undemocratic and another step back towards MAGA fascism. Secondly, I wish to share that I pray to God that the ceasefire in Gaza will never end, and that Israel will not take advantage of their unconscionable, death-dealing bombing and starvation tactics, destroying the water structure, destroying the hospitals, destroying the UN schools, will be stopped. Israel's war on Gaza has killed at least 10 times, maybe 100 times. When we finally are able to get under the rubble and find out how many dead people are down there. The ceasefire doesn't include the return of 1.5 million civilians who were forced to leave their homes in northern Gaza. If they head back to the northern end of Gaza, they're shot. We've got to stop the brutality. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Beatty. Erica Malone.
Evening, all. Thank you all for granting me this opportunity. I come here tonight to speak against the limitation or the proposal of limiting our amounts of times that we can speak and the number of people that can speak. Due to being a community mother to many, a person that is very active in city and a lot of other community events, this is something that is gravely needed, especially That being said, of our youth, who I am often the voice for and speak in the gap and stand in for them. That said, due to a significant amount of negative interactions with our youth and the police that are said to protect and serve those, we're going to need way more than one time a month to have these open forums, because our youth are having these encounters on a daily basis. And waiting until these things pile up once a month, there's no telling what can happen if the pot is left to boil and it explodes. I am the mother of a youth who had a very interesting encounter, and I cannot speak to it based off of the current situation. And it was stated that he and others were gang members and such, and that was not the case. No further research was done, no amount of time was given. It was just they were all deemed guilty, and now we have to go through this whole process of having to prove them innocent. But again, I'm here standing in the gap for those parents who are afraid to come and speak in these types of situations. I am here standing in the gap for the children, the youth that don't have parents to stand here and speak in these situations. Y'all cannot, we cannot, collectively, individually, we cannot limit the amount and time frames because the times don't fit everybody's schedules. I work 3 jobs, and I still make it a point to be an active citizen in the community, partaking in things that go for the greater good of all, the collective objective, and not the objective of a few. Please understand the importance of all those that I stand in the gap for, whether it be clergy, community health workers, or county officials, because I know so many of y'all, and I've sat at tables with y'all. I've done the work with y'all, yet my son and other youth were targeted, and now we're trying to have those spaces taken and limited, which I believe is completely unfair. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Heather Hildebrand.
Hi, I wanted to take a moment before I continue my comment to acknowledge the service of the council members. I know some of you are outgoing, and I'm not going to get to see you in the same way, although I look forward to what you do next. Tara and Russ specifically, I think that you've always been a great set of voices for our community. Really appreciate your work, and I honor you, as well as Councilman Malik. I wish you luck in your new role in the city. I'm really excited with how the city has been going since I moved here. And I'm also a busy person who has taken some time out of my day. I apologize for being late, but I was driving back up from Dayton, where I was representing a worker who was injured in an attempt to escape from an active shooter situation. So I can tell you that I experience difficult situations in my job every day too. I've been in physical danger at my job, and I understand that you probably feel some of these threats as well, and I'm sorry for it. I'm sorry that's the society we live in. But I think it would be deeply wrong and even immoral to limit public comment. So many people don't have a voice at all. So many people don't understand how our systems work, often through very little fault of their own. We all know there are many people in this city who don't have opportunities. And we also know that the people who do the work of the city aren't always the people who get to speak. And honestly, I think it's terrible when someone has to feel uncomfortable, but we all feel uncomfortable at times. And I think that we need to, if we take on this role of service in our communities, take a deep breath and deal with it. I'm not talking down to you. I'm not saying that it's okay to feel bad, but this is a really important responsibility to make sure our citizens' voices are heard. Limiting public comment diminishes our access to democracy. And at the end of the day, most of the people who you serve will never get much of an opportunity to interact with you anyways. It could be because they're working at Taco Bell tonight, because someone has to put food in people's mouths and someone has to work these terrible jobs that no one wants to work. They could be working at the Amazon distribution center, getting hurt on the job and not having a union to represent them. They could be stuck at home doing childcare while their partner is out working. There are a variety of things that can hold them back. I love that Zoom has allowed us to have a little bit more access, and I see this step back as just a way that limits working people's ability to speak. So in my capacity as a citizen and as someone who's very interested in the cause of labor moving forward for the city, I would just ask that the citizens of Akron have the same access to democracy that my union members have. They know that they can call even when I'm going to hear something that they really have to get off their chest and I really don't want to hear. I find it challenging every day, so I honor you in your quest to work through that, and I just really hope that you will provide more opportunities, not less, for citizens to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Heather. William Reynolds.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I want to emphasize the importance of respecting individuals' differences in our diverse city. Akron is a tapestry of cultures, backgrounds, and perspectives, and it is this diversity that makes our human experience rich and vibrant. Respecting difference goes beyond mere tolerance. It's about embracing the unique qualities that each person brings to the table, whether it's difference in race, religion, gender, socioeconomic status, or abilities. Hearing, understanding, and appreciating these distinctions create a more inclusive and harmonious community. By respecting individuals' differences, we foster an environment where everyone feels valued and heard. It's about acknowledging that we all have something valuable to contribute, and that our differences should be celebrated rather than being ignored and used as a source of division. In a world that is constantly evolving, the ability to respect and learn from diverse perspectives is a crucial skill. It allows us to break down barriers, challenge stereotypes, fight negativity, and build bridges of understanding by recognizing and accepting our differences. We promote unity and create a foundation for a more tolerant and compassionate Akron. Let us commit ourselves to fostering an atmosphere of respect, where each person is seen and heard for who they are, irrespective of their differences. As we navigate the complexities of our interconnected city, let us remember that it is through understanding and respecting one another that we can truly build a better, more harmonious future for Akron and for all. Realize, I said nothing about agreeing. Yeah, there's some nights I hear people stand up here and I just roll my eyes. Oh no, I'm hearing it again. Let's be honest. Most weeks, many of us don't eat dinner until after council meeting. Keep in mind, even if you as individual councilors were more approachable and more responsive, there is not a single chance for us to stand up and speak to all of you, for all of you to hear what is important to us. And I think that fact is what should be really pushing that decision, that there's no other venue to speak to all of you, and you can't share everything that your constituents share.
Thank you, William. Acacia Reynolds.
Hello, Council. Madam President. So I spoke to you last week about this very thing. And let me clarify. So-called approachability. Where do you think that I am when y'all are so approachable? I am at work. I am definitely at work at 9 to 6, sometimes 10 to 7. But if I am not at work yet, I am preparing to go to work. So when are you guys so approachable? A lot of us have jobs. A lot of us have no other way to talk to you except for this meeting. To limit what we can say to you, how many of us can speak to you, is un-American. I am floored that somebody didn't just outright throw this out the moment it was proposed. This is not democratic. This is not how we as Americans do business, to say that our public cannot speak to our voted officials. Honestly, the first time I heard this, I looked at my husband and said, they are trying to sneak one by us again. You did it with White Pond. You did it with Amokai. How many more times are you going to sit there and try to pass these things and not listen to the people? And now you just don't even want to hear from us? Get a grip, because there is no better way to say F you to the city than to tell us we can't even talk to you. I forfeit the rest of my time because I can't even figure out anything more to say.
Thank you, Acacia. And I apologize if I mispronounced the name. Is it Dania?
Good evening. My name is Dania Jafel, and I'm a Palestinian American. I've been a resident of Akron for 6 years now, and before that, I lived back in Palestine in the West Bank for 7 years of my life, where I witnessed and experienced firsthand the effects of a violent colonization and apartheid on its victims. I, along with my dad, uncles, and cousins, had to travel through checkpoints every day to get to work and school, checkpoints that would close at the blink of an eye, causing miles and miles of traffic that we sometimes couldn't get out of until late in the night, as if our right to education or livelihood was less than that of an Israeli child or civilian. Monthly, we would get news of civilians, sometimes distant family members or friends, being killed or arrested by the IDF. A lot of times they were children under the age of 18 being killed or detained without a charge or just trial for things as small as throwing a rock, which, if you didn't know, is punishable by almost 10 years in prison. The Israeli apartheid system makes it so that we don't experience a minute of peace or freedom, limiting the amount of water we get in the summer months, limiting where we can and can't go, limiting our access to the most holiest of sites, which for many of us is right in our backyards if it wasn't for the apartheid wall, and even controlling if we're allowed into our own country at all, taking away the right of my father to step foot in his land for 10 years, and many of times limiting the return of people at all in their entire lifetime. And they rain tear gas, skunk water, and bullets on our people and villages when we have the nerve to protest or when the voices of our resistance gets too loud. In this resolution that was passed last Monday, Section 5 acknowledges the right for Israel to exist, but it fails to acknowledge that this existence is on the back of Palestinians, that this existence began with the exile of 750,000 Palestinians and the massacre of countless villages of people, and that this existence continues with the steep cost of Palestinian blood, freedom, and dignity. As an Akron resident, I am grateful that we have taken a very small step in the right direction by calling for a ceasefire and access to humanitarian aid, especially as the death toll in Gaza is being reported to have exceeded 20,000 civilians. But we have taken 10 steps back by not calling Israel what it is, a settler colonial state that is practicing both apartheid and permanent occupation of and against the Palestinian people. And also by failing to criticize the complicity of the United States in Israel's war crimes, the use of collective punishment on Gazan civilians, and the ongoing occupation of Palestine. As taxpaying Americans, it is our job to know where our money is going and what our money is being used for. And I will not be quiet when that money is being used to provide weapons to Israel to murder my people, and neither should you. So we will continue to show up and make our voices heard until change is made on the city, state, and national level, and I call on you all to reconsider the proposed changes to the public comment during these meetings. As elected officials, it is your job to listen to what the people have to say and to make our voices heard in one of the only places where we can directly do so. Limiting public comments and making the sign-up process more difficult does a huge disservice to your constituents and only aids in the further silencing of our voices. So do right by the people and reconsider amending these resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Baker.
Hello. My entire life, I've heard that there isn't proper engagement in government, but especially on the local level. But changes like the ones proposed for Akron City Council make it impossible for the average person to participate. It is not clear how the maximum of 10 speakers are going to be determined. Is it a wrestling match, or will it be pay-to-play full of your favorite types of developers and people who might move to Akron if we build expensive housing that is out of reach to the average citizen in the city with the 26th highest eviction rate in the country? Restricting community access further divides the community and the city council, which also already has a huge level of distrust. I understand and empathize that we live in a scary time, and they are all in public-facing positions in a state with abhorrent gun laws. But restricting backpacks and bag sizes means that I and others can't come on our ways to or from work. These evening meetings seem convenient, but many people are still rearranging their obligations and making an effort to be here and participating. As a previous speaker said, we need to come in force to show when something matters. It's not effective if we give you a piece of paper signed with names. We have to show up in person to show that it actually matters. Bodies mean power. The city is full of people who have expertise in all areas: historians, political scientists, clergy, psychologists, teachers, service workers, and they're all coming to share these experiences and their lived experiences. Choosing your own experts reinforces your own biases, as happened with your resolution the other week. There is not a two-state solution. It is not possible to compromise on genocide. I'd also like to say that I really hope that the shower bus happens. I think it is a wonderful thing that can happen for the community, for one of the most vulnerable areas in our community. Thank you to the council people who have been supporting this. I appreciate that they are responding to community voices. And I'd also like to acknowledge council people Mosley and Neal, who are leaving council. I've always felt that you have listened to the citizens. And then finally, I'd also like to thank Councilperson Mosley for her remarks last week about the Barber College scholarships. I think we should continue further participating in this, and also look at the efficacy of where our funds have been going for the last however long. We are giving money to people all the time, and what is the return that anyone is getting? Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Ashley White.
Hello, I want to start by talking about the limiting of public comment. I think it's pretty clear that the people who have come down today, nobody's in favor of that. Everybody wants their opportunity to speak to council, the people who represent us. There are only a few opportunities for the public to say what they want and who they feel represents them best. And every few years during an election isn't enough. So when we come down here to say that we agree with the resolution, or we think that we should be funding a shower bus, that's something that we hope is receptive to you and something that you consider. The silencing of the public isn't more democratic. It doesn't make sense to take away people's freedom to say what they need in the city and then expect engagement in the city. I think that Akron is becoming a place that a lot of people still love, but it's being sold to other companies and other people. Businesses are coming in, building housing that we can't afford, even though we've lived here maybe all our lives. Businesses are buying up areas and turning gardens into parking lots. So I think that the only ability that we have to hold our city council accountable is to come down here and say something in public, on the record, where we all know that everybody can see that we've said what we believed. So I don't support the limiting of the number of speakers, the limiting of the times that people can come down, or the change of time when they're speaking. And my second part I want to talk about, just as a on-the-record thing, is to specify about the situation still happening in Palestine and in the West Bank. The thousands of people who have been arrested in the last few weeks, and especially this last week, as the ceasefire, but really humanitarian pause has persisted. I think that this isn't an issue that, I understand that we've had a resolution that has been, I feel like it's a compromise that nobody likes. but we have had a resolution. And I think in the coming weeks, we're going to have more and more news about what's happening in Palestine and the egregious treatment of people who have been segregated from the population. And we're going to have to face that on more, I guess, with more clarity. So I want to acknowledge that at least some residents in Akron do not agree with what's happening in Palestine. We want to stand up against it, and we urge our council people to too. There has been a lot of talk in the city, and I just want that to be on record. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Ashley. Charlie Pruitt?
Before I talk about the other stuff, I just wanted to say real quick, the Native American resolution that was passed quite literally does nothing, just reminds us that you have done nothing and continue to do nothing, and you should do something about that. You won't, but I'm sure that was just a slap in the face to your Native American constituents. Please don't place retaliatory restrictions on public comment. Retaliatory restrictions on people asking you to care about death tolls so high that the Gazan Ministry of Health has recently not been able to keep track of anymore. Literally, who wants this? What angle does this look good for you? When introducing this, council said that it was because this is what Cleveland was doing, but you know Cleveland's getting sued, right? But if you want to get on that too, I guess that's fine. But I think you forget that you created these rules to placate your constituents, and taking them away doesn't mean we're going to go home. I get that you know that this will look bad, and you're willing to take that hit just so you don't have to keep being reminded that you support the killing of an entire race of people, but we could all go home for the rest of our lives, and you'll still be in support of killing an entire race of people. Ignoring us doesn't change that. And what's going to happen when Akron police kills again? We don't get to speak about it. You're waiting to strike down the Oversight Committee's power until we can't speak on it, while giving them more flock cameras, more ring cameras, and more bonuses. It's sadistic. To feel a breath of relief from not seeing our faces week after week is a celebration of death. So you can take that breath, but fuck you for doing so.
Thank you. Thank you, Charlie. Ebony Brown.
So last week you called the Palestinian members of the community to acknowledge and address their concerns and then promptly dismiss them so that you can call the Zionists and have their concerns met. In the 11th hour, you passed a resolution about Indigenous History Month, and you did not let the Indigenous people orchestrate this resolution. Have you not? How is it that you have not learned from the community that we no longer want lukewarm stances on and performative virtue signaling? You showed that you do not want our input, and you, especially when we dissent, you have now decided to limit our ability to speak, and you have now taken on the task of disincentivizing us as a community. It is disincentivizing to come here with a group of people that have power over you and then will laugh in your face, chide you, and roll their eyes at you. It is disincentivizing to have a council that will make targeted legislation about what they don't like about your public comment. It is disincentivizing for you to turn the lights off on us while we are talking to you after our short 3-minute public comment. We always come here uncomfortable, and yet you want to prioritize your comfort. This is all we have, and you want to take that away from us. And I would like to spend the rest of my time educating you about the crisis in Palestine right now, because in the peak of the crisis, you did not decide to educate yourselves. So I will not stop educating you. Israel has the most advanced military in the world. so much that the U.S. Gets military technology from Israel. They have the most advanced and most powerful bombs on the planet, including nuclear bombs, and they decide to use this military force on the concentration camp. But the entire Gaza Strip is comprised of refugees. Oh, I'm sorry. They literally have dropped bombs on refugee camps, but the entire Gaza Strip isn't comprised of refugees because 70% of the population in Gaza is refugees from the Nakba. This is the same situation as many mowing the lawns in 2004, 2006, 2008, 2012, 2018, 2021, 2023. You'll see that many of the Palestinians, the humanitarian pause, that 150 Palestinians were released, and yet in the West Bank, they have just kidnapped another 1,500 Palestinian children.
Ebony, your time is up. I'm sorry. Caleb Mays.
Hi, everybody. I'd like to speak about the fact that you guys are trying to limit the people of Akron's voices, their time, and the amount of times that they can speak. You know, this is the United States. We're based off democracy. That's the whole foundation of this country, in a sense. And what you guys are trying to do is completely the opposite of that. We live in a city of 200,000 people, but you want to limit to 10 people per council meeting. I don't see how that even equates to the numbers. It doesn't make sense to me. All of you are sitting here being paid by the people of Akron. There should be way more people here, but I'm sure a lot of people don't even know what is going on because this information doesn't just show up at people's doors. A lot of the ways that this information is spread is mostly through news outlets. And as people who read the Akron Beacon Journal online, you have to have a paid subscription to even get a lot of their news articles. So there's no way for people to know this information offhand. But like I said, you guys are all sitting here being paid by the people of Akron. You are all representatives of your council and wards to represent those people of those areas. But at the same time, you're trying to limit the things that they want to say. How do you represent the people, but at the same time, you're saying you can't speak on the matters that you guys are implementing and, you know, talking about in regards to the people of this city? Everything you do here is in regards to the people of this city, is for the people of this city. Your position would not exist if it wasn't for the needs of the people of this city. So I just don't understand how it even got proposed, and for two, how we're even here talking about this or having to talk about this. It doesn't make any sense to me, and I just think it's completely ridiculous. Like I said, you guys are all paid by the people, therefore you should not be trying to limit in any way what the people have to say. If anything, you should be figuring out more creative ways to let people come, not even in person, but to have people's voices heard and other types of ways, whether that's creating some type of public dialogue online or whatever, but this is literally the only space people have to be heard in a public setting and on record. And with the rest of my time, I'd just like to say that I do think you guys should be doing something. I don't know if you have yet or not, but if you haven't, you should be using your voices and your positions to speak about what's going on in Palestine. The billions of dollars that we're giving to Israel, like the lady said, a very advanced military. The billions of dollars we're giving them for something that has nothing to do with our country, for one, and then, you know, those billions of dollars could be used in so many ways around all the cities throughout America. We have a huge homeless population that continues to grow, and we can't do anything about it. You guys are trying to figure out ways to handle it.
I'm sorry, your time is up.
We should be speaking to the state and to the federal government about not spending their money.
Thank you, Caleb. We do have some individuals who signed up virtually, so we want to give them an opportunity. Dr. Jahala, can you hear us? Are you online with us?
Yes, I am. Can you see me?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
wonderful, yes.
Thank you again for allowing me to speak. Um, it's been a week since the Akron City Council passed a resolution calling for the ceasefire in Gaza. Since then, the death toll has reached over 20,000 and the number of injured is over 25,000. The number of missing and presumed dead under the rubble is estimated between $6,000 to $10,000. I'm sorry, 6,000 to 10,000 people. The number of people displaced is over 1.5 million. If you want to put in proportionality reason or equivalence, that would be about 3 million deaths in the United States and 3 million injured in the United States. The amount of people that have died and been displaced now is more than occurred during the Nakba or the catastrophe of 1948. While I think it was great that Akron took a stand in calling for a ceasefire and being one of the first and largest cities in the United States to do so at that time, we still need to do more. It was said in many meetings in forming the resolution that negotiating with those who kill innocent civilians and take children and women hostage was unacceptable, and the only option was eradication of the perpetrators and regime change. Yet somehow the Israeli government still is in power. And while the ceasefire is going on and some hostages and prisoners have been released by the Israeli government, they have continued to abduct more women and children. In the last week, they've abducted 1,000 women and children. Has anybody thought to ask themselves why they're taking women and children? So I know a lot of residents here ask why what's going on in Israel and Palestine is of any concern here in Akron. The reason is because the city of Akron has a sister city on land where Palestinian people were massacred and forced to flee by Zionist terrorists in 1948. And now most of those refugees are concentrated in camps in Gaza. Yes, refugees in concentration camps. Also, the city of Akron does a lot of business with Israel and companies there. Our elected officials even take trips there to work on closer business relationships. I asked our elected officials reassess all these relationships and not travel there until Israel abides by international law regarding the illegal occupation and the Geneva Convention regarding humanitarian laws. As you recall in the resolution passed last week, you not only called for a ceasefire, but you also took a bold step of calling out Israel to abide by international law. You also went a step further and took the bold step to call out the illegal occupation and illegal settlements. Hence, since you agreed that their behavior is illegal, you cannot continue to do business with them as usual. I know we discussed this in some council meetings with some council members, and while not in the resolution because it was deleted, they are on the record stating that they will reassess their relationships go forward. We cannot turn a blind eye to the killings of innocents and crimes for some financial gain. We do not want blood on our hands. No one here would accept that if their family member was on the receiving end of this criminal behavior. Another reason why this conflict affects us here in the United States is because billions of our tax dollars are funding the weaponry, the killing, apartheid, occupation, and illegal settlements. While people in this country, while people in Israel enjoy free education, healthcare, free housing to live in illegal settlements, we're told by our government we cannot provide these benefits here. Sounds crazy, but it's true. Lastly, I'd like to also ask you to pray for the 3 Palestinian American students who were recently victims of a shooting that targeted them for being Palestinian. One is critically injured after being shot in the back. He may never walk again.
Dr.
These
Jahala,
young
I'm
men-
sorry, your time is up. I wanted you to be able to finish your thought, but I'm so sorry.
Could I just make one statement?
I'm sorry because I didn't allow everyone else to continue, okay?
These guys went to the same school I went to, and they left there for trying to escape the crimes that are being perpetrated against them.
Thank you, Dr. Jahala. Zach, are you online with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Namaskar, everyone. Our community, like many communities across the country, is caught in a fire of division and frustration, an epidemic of people not feeling seen or heard fully. The proposed changes to public comment are pouring of fuel onto that fire. Cutting off people's voices when they already don't feel fully heard will not lead to a calming effect or a coming together. Council leadership has an immense opportunity right now. You have a chance to create a truly powerful legacy. Bring together civic leaders, nonprofits, and people who speak at council often to work with you on reimagining how these meetings and how public comment and input can actually meet everyone's needs. We don't need to look at regressive policies from Cleveland, but we can dream up and cultivate a whole new way forward together. And there is a way to meet all of our needs. Where there's a will, there is always a way. I want to see suffering be relieved and our city given the tools and opportunity to heal. You could be the start of that possibility. By refusing business as usual and by digging into the hard work of collaboration, you can play a significant role in disrupting our entrenched cycles of us and them, of animosity and adversity. Imagine council meetings where no one dreaded attending, where council folk and the public left feeling heard and witnessed and valued. I absolutely assure you it's possible. I have seen the people of Akron perform far larger miracles. You just have to let us in. I don't think any of you signed up to be Superman. The good news is Akron doesn't need Superman. We just need people committed to the humanity within and in front of us. I know that I'm not the only member of the public committed to this. I challenge all of us to step up to what this moment demands of us. And as I end, I must reiterate that moving forward on this proposed change will only further deteriorate the trust and relationship. You don't need a crystal ball to see that voting for this change will lead Akron decades away from hope and healing. How can we solve Akron's big problems if we're not willing to talk with and listen to each other? Hope and healing is our common goal. Let us work together to make this goal reality. And I would like to say in my remaining few moments, give a very heartfelt thank you to Councilwoman Mosley and Councilman Neal for all of your service and work throughout your time on council. You've really made a difference. Specifically, you've helped to save, for now, Akron's drinking water and many other things. So I really appreciate that. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Zach. Janos?
Janos, right here. Well, first off, before I begin, I must also say a mighty hello to Nancy Holland, who is elected to stay home again this week and come over by Zoom. And continuing on with this, I must say that I'm non-binary and I'm speaking in support of Palestine. As of this week, over 20,000 Palestinians lie dead. Last week, it came to my attention that the city council invited a former IDF soldier to praise the Israeli army and to help them revive their resolution calling for a ceasefire. Doesn't sound too different from when the Canadian Parliament gave a Ukrainian Nazi named Yaroslav Hunka a standing ovation. But in order to understand what I mean by this, one must ask, who is the IDF? Much like American police beginning as slave catchers and union busters, the IDF began as the Haganah and the Irgun. The Irgun split from the Haganah but would later rejoin it. These were Zionist militias in Palestine that ostensibly had the purpose of protecting Jews. However, their true purpose was far more dangerous. 32 Haganah members were parachuted into occupied Europe in 1944 to help repair the Zionist movements, not to rescue Jews or aid resistance. Irgun bombed the King David Hotel on July 22, 1946, as an attack on the British mandate that governed Palestine, killing 91 people, Jewish, British, and Palestinian. Irgun was led by future Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin, and he funded this attack as well as many others via demanding money from Jewish merchants and insurance fraud. In 1937, a Haganah intelligence agent named Feivel Polks came to Berlin and met with the Gestapo, offering to become an informant for the Nazis. With the help of Adolf Eichmann, he returned to Palestine with Mauser pistols and rifles smuggled in cement barrels. He even invited Eichmann to visit Palestine, an offer that the future architect of concentration camps would accept. The Haganah was even encouraged to harass Holocaust survivors, forcing them into Palestine. You can find this in the Klausner Report of May 1948. Some of Irgun's founders from the Revisionist Party actively praised Hitler, calling him the savior of Germany. Several Irgun members, such as Abraham Stern, even proposed a cooperation offer in 1941 to the Nazis. You can still see the traditions of terrorism and fascism in the IDF that came from its ancestors and the Haganah and the Irgun through their attacks on Palestinians today. These include a recent attack on Gaza's Indonesian hospital, killing at least 12. Countless videos and stories of their brutality exist. One recent example is a 14-year-old named Yazan al-Harazan who lost 3 limbs like Darth Vader. Did Yazan slaughter 40 babies? Israel has admitted to attacking its own people, as did at the Nova Music Festival. A continuation of this pattern. These traditions exist in American police thanks to the IDF training. Many have seen IDF members carrying pride flags as they attack Gaza. I could have a boyfriend and convert to Judaism Torah and steal a house from Palestinians.
I'm sorry, but your
However,
time is up. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, your time's up. Dewan Wash.
Hey, are folks able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, cool. So Mayor Malik promised a more open, responsive, and collaborative government. The changes to the public comments rules are the opposite of that and are a slap in the face to those who are civically engaged and come here to be heard. President Somerville mentioned that the model currently being looked at is in Cleveland. While it's important to allow the public to comment prior to decisions being made, I'm confused at both the timing of these changes, the limitation on the number of speakers, and the opportunities that citizens will have to address this body. We are expected to believe that the proposed changes aren't in reaction to the political uprisings around the Israel-Hamas war, though such uprisings are happening all over the world, and to Mayor Malik's point, are happening all over the country. Cleveland, which only recently gained a public comment period in 2021, is again looking at making more changes right now too. So we're told not to jump to conclusions, to consider the other meetings where folks have shown up en masse because they care, and not for a moment think that such changes are in response to political uprisings. Please make it make sense. People show up because what this council does or doesn't do is important. The public comment period may be the only time a citizen has to engage. As multiple people have mentioned, people have jobs, family, and lives. Limiting who and when people can speak to make the meetings more professional feels like a dog whistle against those who may not always speak to you kindly, who may not use the right words or tone, or may be angry. This is elitist, exclusionary, and reactionary in many ways. Silencing dissent isn't a solution to the inconvenience of people caring enough to hold you accountable. Don't assume that because on average 10 or fewer people speak at meetings, that people don't care about the decisions you make. Many people don't come because they can't for many reasons, least of these being the lack of concern for your decisions. Limiting who should come or how often in order to not have to listen to the wants and needs of your constituents is the antithesis of being a public servant. I encourage this council to live up to the mayor's promise of a more open, collaborative, and responsive government by allowing more opportunity for the public to engage with you before you make decisions and not less. That you not place limits on the number of people who care enough to be open with their thoughts, responsive to your actions, and come to engage, educate, and collaborate with you during council meetings, and who may be unable to use any other channels as effectively as this one. Additionally, I think it is important that the council support Ms. Mosley's advocacy efforts with the League of Cities, with the resolution passed last week on the Israel-Hamas war, and to encourage Congresswoman Amelia Sykes to do all she can to ensure that our tax dollars aren't spent on murdering babies, and are instead used to better the quality of life for the citizens of Akron, many of whom are unhoused. Thank you.
Thank you, Dewan. James Quinn.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today on the topic of the Native American Heritage Resolution. As some of you may know, I am Lumbee. My dad is a member of the Lumbee tribe. My grandparents are members of the Lumbee tribe. Their parents were members of the Lumbee tribe. And while our ancestral homelands are in North Carolina, my dad moved here, like many other natives, for work opportunities. Opportunities that would not have been afforded to him on our ancestral lands because of systemic and racist denials of those opportunities. Robeson County, the county where my ancestors and family live, and the homeland of the Lumbees, is the poorest county in North Carolina. And so I was born and raised in Akron, Ohio. This experience is not an uncommon experience for natives living in the U.S. Based on reports, over 60% of natives living in the U.S. live in urban environments, not on reservations or on tribal territory like popular media would have you believe. Some move to urban environments, fleeing oppressive environments and seeking new opportunities, like many members of my family. Some natives are on their ancestral lands, never having been removed despite the active removal periods. All across Akron, there are natives living from nations like Blackfeet, Aleut, Cherokee, Ojibwa, Ohio Ojibwa too, they escaped removal, lived here for millennia, and of course, Lumbee. And yet there are no services available for us. No cultural centers for us to be authentically ourselves, which is incredibly impactful for both youth and adults. No classes teaching language skills for kids and adults. No assistance with navigating the often complex systems of tribal laws that make up each nation. No assistance with job training, no native-led addiction help, and even no assistance in renaming the racist trail names, of which there are some in Akron. And so, while I'm grateful that natives are included in council resolutions, I do ask that people are staying mindful of not using natives as a historical piece and forgetting about us as a still existing multicultural people. staying mindful of natives who are still here, who exist in your community every day. While passing legislation that comes at the end of Native American Heritage Month is still appreciated, Council should also be looking at ways Council can tangibly impact those diverse communities, and in doing so, not seek to alleviate guilt, which can be all too commonplace.
Thank you, James. Curtis Reed? Curtis, are you online with us?
I can see that you're here. Did you just get a prompt that asked you to unmute? I'm going to try again. You should see a pop-up on your screen asking you to unmute.
Okay. Curtis, we're going to come back to you. Lillian Barnes?
Hi, guys. How are you?
Hello.
Nice to see you, Nancy. Finally. Well, I'm here to also speak about silencing our voices. Thank you, Margot Somerville, for reaching out to me today to let me know that you have been reaching out to Michelle Wright. I greatly appreciate that. I heard that she also tried to call you, so hopefully you guys can hurry up and talk soon, and you can get her linked up to the organization that is trying to help her. But silencing our voice, this is, keep in mind that I'm a survivor and I moved here to Akron as a survivor. And to sit up
Lillian, can you hear us? I think she froze. Okay, you kind of froze up. Go ahead, Lillian, I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So to try to take our voices away is not cool. It's not fair. We come out here to let you guys know what's going on out here because you don't know everything unless you hear it from us, right? So to silence us is not fair. So I hope you guys really understand that. I don't know when my ward meetings are, so I can't come. Um, Connor, you're pretty much quiet. I don't know too much about what's going on in my ward or whatnot. I know that I've made complaints about how my street is and how my driveway is and everything else. I'm on that list to get you know, my street paved soon. But you're my ward person, and I think that if you're having ward meetings, we should all know about it as soon as possible. It should be some type of letter sent out saying, "Hey, it's a ward meeting. Come out and join me to let me know what's going on in our community." But we don't know that or whatnot. How I find out is through my community members and watching council meetings and things like that. So I just feel like things have to change, and in order for it to change, you still have to listen to our voices. We're not trying to come out to your houses like how we did for Jalen Walker protesting and everything else to let you guys know that we're upset, we're mad. It's no threat. It's we're letting you guys know that, hey, we want to be heard. So to take that away is not cool. I'm gonna piggyback off of Emokai or whatnot. Everything that he said is facts. It's hard to get in contact with you guys. Some of you guys just there and taking our money or whatnot. So to sit up there and silence us, not cool, man. And then on top of that, with the Palestine and everybody else and what everybody else is saying, our kids are being killed. How would you guys like it if we into a war and our children here in Akron is being killed or whatnot? My kids came down there and spoke as well. So I don't want our voices to be silent. I want my kids to be able to have a let go, to be able to let you guys know what's going on in their schools, what's going on in their community, how they fear or whatnot. I stayed next to a recovery house or whatever.
Lillian, I'm so sorry, but your time is up.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yep.
Curtis Reed, are you able to unmute?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. Thanks for having me. I just want to say I'm pretty opposed to the proposal to change the rules. So a lot of us work like work for a living, and I know you guys do too. But like when I get off work at 5 o'clock, my first thing I have to do is actually like make dinner for my family, and that takes like over an hour, and then I have to like actually feed the family as well, and that takes a while. And I feel that these new rules would really like get in the way of basically like make it a lot harder for people like myself as well as like everyone else in the city to actually like make our voices heard. I also think too that one of the issues is with the amount of people that like the proposed rules limit to the number 10. Um, I'm sure you've noticed, but there are like a lot more people here talking about Israel, and I feel like if you just limit it to like 10 people, then all we're going to hear about is maybe people who are super passionate about one thing, and you guys won't hear about the like small issues like the fact that there's no sidewalk between Front Street and on front between Front Street on Howe Avenue, and how that is pretty bad and affecting people. And so I'm pretty just generally opposed to like these proposed rule changes. And that's pretty much how I feel. So I thank you for your time, and I thank you for listening. I see the rest of my time.
Thank you, Curtis. That concludes our public comment period for this evening. We'll now move into committee assignments. Rules, Councilman Fusco.
2 o'clock.
Public Safety, Councilman Kamer.
2:15.
Budget and Finance, Councilwoman Amobian.
3 p.m.
Parks and Recreation, Councilman Lombardo.
1:45.
Planning and Economic Development, Councilman Fusco.
1.
Housing and Neighborhood Assistance, Councilman Fusco.
Subject to call.
Public Service, Councilwoman Mosley.
2 p.m.
Health and Social Services, Councilwoman Amobian.
2:30.
Public Utilities and Green Committee, Councilman McKittrick.
2:45.
Thank you. Is there anything else coming before council at this time? Councilman Malik?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to reflect a little bit on the comments made tonight by, I think about 15 people. There obviously is a lot of concern around the proposal to change the public comment period. I think that the two areas that I cannot support are limiting the total number of people and also the restrictions on people speaking once every 30 days. I think that to the point of many of the people who spoke tonight, we should be looking to have more input, not less, even when the input challenges us or mocks us or makes fun of us or is unkind. Losing my train of thought. Several people have mentioned the proposals that would have people speak before the meeting, and then any additional people who were not able to speak before the meeting could speak at the end of the meeting. And I think that is an area that would make a lot of sense to pursue. I also agree with the point that Zach Friedoff made that there is opportunity to improve the public comment period and improve the way in which people are able to engage with council in this space. It is, we should just acknowledge a very unique situation at the state level and at the federal level. There is no situation in which people can just show up at the end of their day and speak directly to all of their representatives assembled in one room. And I think that, again, it can be a challenging and experience that is not fun or enjoyable, but it is important. And people bring day in and day out, week in and week out, points to us that I think we all learn from and that challenge our views. And then the final point, and I hope I'm not too defensive when I say this, but I do just want to acknowledge the hard work that goes on week in and week out amongst my colleagues on this horseshoe. These are paid as part-time jobs, and we absolutely do work for every citizen of the city of Akron. But the work that I think most, if not every member of this body does really reflects really a full-time commitment to this work. And when we take these jobs, we don't have superpowers, right? We don't end up with more hours in a day than we had before to answer phone calls or emails. We don't end up with superpowers that allow us to not take things personally. And we should always strive to be better. We should always strive to do our very best for citizens. But we are, at the end of the day, people too. And, you know, I don't want that fact to be lost in some of this discussion. So I thank everyone who came down here and spoke on this, and I appreciate it.
Councilwoman Mosley?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you to the residents who came down to voice their concerns about the change within our rules and procedures. Listening, learning, and hearing from our residents is what access to democracy looks like. I will not support anything that silences the residents. Although my time here around this horseshoe may be coming to an end, my advocacy and my service will never end for the city that I love, that I was born in and raised in. I would offer up to my colleagues that I have 2 ward meetings left before December 31st. And although we will have a ceremonial passing of the torch on December 11th, my last day around this horseshoe is December 31st. I will continue to do the work all the way until my last day, and that's November 30th, when I have a ward meeting. I invite you to come and talk to the residents about why you feel this change is necessary. And then I have one on December 21st. I think it's important to go and talk to our residents before we do anything. I think there should be a conversation that goes into the new year. There's 4 of us leaving from around this horseshoe. I don't think we should be making that decision. I think that should be made for the new council coming in, and this be an opportunity where people can voice their opinions about why they think it's important for public comment to stay as such. Again, I don't support silencing our residents of any form. I've had uncomfortable times where people come down and say things to me. It's part of the job. It's part of the job. It's what we signed up for. There's a lot of things that we didn't sign up for. I never signed up for people to come to my house with guns and monkey suits, but it was part of the job, apparently. I just think we should be very mindful of the steps we take here and on out, because these are the people who elected us to sit in these seats, and we need to be mindful of that. And lastly, I just wanted to really talk about the residents on Adolph and the work that the residents there, especially Avery and Pete, and the work that they did in that community, and they continue to do even when the garden moves, and SUMA coming to the table and having those conversations with them and bringing the community in as a whole. That's what community looks like, and that's what we need to do here when we talk about public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Neal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As always, appreciate information that was shared by our constituents. In regards to council's rules, I think it's important that we take the same process that we took when we looked at reimagined public safety. We formed a committee. What better way than, if council does not want to find an independent body to audit our process and procedures, to reestablish trust amongst our constituents, then allow for a process for constituents to make up a committee to walk hand in hand with council to evaluate its rules. One of the challenges down here and why council doesn't function the way it should function is because it's not educated. Again, we don't even put our street sweepers out on the street without them learning how to use the equipment. We don't put our safety forces out on the street without them being trained. But I've been down here on council, and the only education I've gotten in regards to the legislative process is that I have sought through National League of Cities. This council oversees almost $1 billion in a budget. No budget training. Unconscionable. So I think if we're serious, add to these council rules a section 11 that talks about best governance practice that mandates that council go through training. Continuous education training as well as initial training. I hear my colleagues saying pass it on to the next council, but the next council is going to be even more naive. You laugh, but this council, go back to when this council came in. The first thing that was done was to change the rules, to manipulate the process down here. A charter that was established 200-something years ago for a purpose to create checks and balances. This council undid that. The first meeting, without any training. We just had a discussion here about understanding the budget. And folks don't understand that if dollars are coming out of council to pay for chief of staff, that's a violation of our city's charter, a violation of our rules. That can only be coming from the mayor, as he said what he was doing before. So education is critical. And I think an open, transparent process for citizens to be engaged in looking at council's rules would only be fair. And utilizing a budget online, which this council passed 8 years ago, but always found a reason not to fund, and a legislative process that becomes transparent where constituents can follow the creation of legislation through. The tools are out there. Granicus showed us that over 10, 12 years ago. And then last but not least, one of the parts of the public comment process is when people speak and they have a concern, we can usually refer them, Madam President, to someone from the administration. It's been over a month. No one has been there. No one from the law department that's supposed to serve this body. No one from the law department. It's a sign of disrespect to this council. It's a sign of disrespect to the constituents. What are they supposed to do? Look them up on Zoom? Not only is the restriction on the public comment, but the lack of access to the public servants who are supposed to be down here when they come down here to speak. And then last but not least, many of our constituents have a concern afterwards, and we go to speak to them. Last week, I don't even think we had 3 minutes or so, and the lights start flickering off. That's a sign of disrespect. So we've got to understand what our responsibility is, and it's to serve. We are public servants. Next week, I'd like to see the administration here, definitely our law director, because still waiting to hear about the conflict of interest. We've got to hear debates in the paper. It's in this chamber where we're supposed to have those discussions. So, again, appreciate what's shared. Council rules need to be amended to have a piece in there for best governance practice that mandates that this council is educated. And I think it'd be good to have it open and transparent so our constituents can be informed as well to know what we're supposed to be doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Neal. Is there anything else coming before council at this time? Councilman Malik?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, there's a motion to adjourn. If there are no objections, meeting adjourned.
This concludes the live broadcast of Akron City Council. Margot Somerville, President of Council presiding. Please exit the chambers at this time. Thank you.